The best part of a destination rarely appears in the brochure. It lives in conversations, in people, and in experiences you don't find by accident. Beyond the Brochure explores the stories behind the destinations we think we know. Extraordinary travel doesn't begin with an itinerary. It begins with connection. Connection to the people, to the place, and the stories that stay with us long after we return home. I'm Linda Lowen. This is Beyond the Brochure from Explorography. Most people experience South Australia's Limestone Coast through a windscreen. They drive between Melbourne and Adelaide without realizing what they're passing. For Simon and Kerry Meares, one visit wasn't enough. Long weekends became holidays. Holidays became a new life. In 2017, they packed up their corporate lives in Melbourne, bought a century-old home in Penola, and started a tour company, Coonawarra Experiences, with a single vehicle. In this episode, Simon takes us through a region known for some of Australia's finest Cabernet Sauvignon, home to the UNESCO World Heritage listed Naracoorte Caves, and a place where, if you know who to call, you can share a private dinner for two on a cattle station that has been operating since the 1850s. Oh, and he also tells us about a bowl of soup.
Please help me welcome Simon Meares from Coonawarra Experiences in the lovely Limestone Coast of South Australia. Welcome, Simon.
Linda, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's wonderful to be in touch and to have a bit of a chat with you about what we have to offer here on the Limestone Coast.
Absolutely. Great. There is so much to offer in the Limestone Coast, but I want to go back a little bit further. How did you end up in the Limestone Coast?
Looking back now, at the time it didn't seem like so much of a big deal, but looking back on our history with myself and my wife Kerry, who runs the business with me, my wife and I got born and bred in Melbourne, Victoria. We are proud Victorians, now proud South Australians. We crossed the dotted line. Both Kerry and I were in corporate lives, all of our lives. So I was in corporate sales and IT up until about 2016 or so. And Kerry was a legal secretary. She worked as an executive assistant. And more recently, she went back and did a graduate diploma in occupational health and safety, still while working full time, which was an incredible effort. And so she worked on a lot of government rail projects and things like that. So when you look at what we were doing then to what we're doing now, absolutely no correlation whatsoever. We have been coming across to the Limestone Coast and in more concentration, the Coonawarra wine region, because we do love our wines. We've always had an affinity with Coonawarra. My father used to have a lot of Coonawarra wines in his collection, though I would sometimes help myself too. He was a great proponent of the region. So it was already in my life as I was growing up and getting used to seeing these sorts of iconic labels for wines in our house. So we started to come across and just absolutely fell in love with the region. And as we'll go through in the chatting, it's the people, it's everything. It started with wine and then the ripple effect happened and just got in our bones. And we just kept coming back time and time again for long weekends and for holidays and discovering more and more about the region. And so in 2017, we decided that we wanted to leave our corporate lives. We wanted to roll the dice as such and start something because we felt we could. We've always wanted to own our own business. We just didn't know what direction we wanted to take it in. We looked at wine bars and other sort of hospitality in Melbourne, but we really didn't want to be anchored to one spot, if you like, a bricks and mortar building. So we came across and started to discuss with some of the locals here about our ideas about starting ostensibly a wine tour company, really, in Coonawarra to begin with. They were very supportive and just said, look, if you do it, we'll support you. And so in 2017, in the month of May, we packed up our property in Melbourne, moved across, bought a stunning old, 100-year-old house this year in Penola and installed some accommodation, did some remodeling, started the business in August 2017 and started with one vehicle and headed out on the Coonawarra Highway Strip to start showcasing the wines to guests arriving in the region, mainly domestically to start with. And so that's how it kicked off.
Wonderful. Now, generally, when North Americans think about wine regions, obviously the Barossa and the Hunter Valley, they come to mind first, and then maybe the Clare as well. Tell me a little bit more about the Coonawarra wine region.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Barossa is a stunning place. We've obviously spent time at Barossa, the Clare. I have never got to the Hunter, so I must get there one day. But the major difference between us and, say, the other wine regions of South Australia, so we're part of the 5 major wine regions. So you've got Barossa, McLaren Vale, the Clare Valley, Adelaide Hills, and Coonawarra. So we're 4 hours south of Barossa, of Adelaide. We're located pretty much halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide. By car, it's 4 hours to Adelaide, 5 hours to Melbourne. The difference between us is Barossa is a day trip, we're a destination. So people can't come to us from Melbourne or Adelaide on a day trip. It's too far away. So when people come to us, they've actively made a concerted effort to come to the region. So if that's by car or by plane and so forth, they've had to put some thought into coming here. We're a very rural area. We're part of what they call, known as the Green Triangle of South Australia. So we're at the most southern tip of South Australia. Fortunately, get quite a lot of rain in most years. So we're very green. Even when other regions are actually quite dry during the summer months, we're actually able to hold a little bit of water and keep it quite green, commented on quite a lot. We're famous for Cabernet Sauvignon. So Barossa, for example, is very famous for Shiraz, which is excellent. Hunter Valley for their Hunter Valley Sauvignons and their sort of medium body Shiraz up there as well. But Cabernet is the king of grapes. And I think what most people find when they get here is there's less traffic, there's less numbers. You don't get the large busloads that you might get in the Hunter Valley or the Barossa, for example, or McLaren Vale. So the pace of the region's a little bit slower, a little bit easier. You're not crushed at the cellar doors or at the restaurants or other venues. And most importantly, by far, if they're not talking about the style of wine that they've enjoyed, it's the people here. And that's, again, that leading back to my first comment, that's what we fell in love with. Most of our reviews, if they're not talking about Kerry or myself, which is lovely, they talk about the people and how the people have resonated with them. And I think that's the major difference between, say, ourselves and Barossa. We're different, but it's the people that make it here.
Sure, because you're in such a smaller community. And yet, the small community that offers so much because you've got not just the wine region, but the caves nearby, and you've got a food route with restaurants and some really nice luxury accommodations as well in the area, which is a little bit unexpected, I would say, from what one would imagine when you're thinking about small town Australia.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about the whole experience when they come to the Coonawarra, including the food, the wine, the culture, the nature. Before you do that, though, do you find that a lot of people are coming on a self-drive between Melbourne and Adelaide when they do, let's say, the Great Ocean Road and then carry on to the next city?
That's a really good point. Yeah, I'll run through it. I'll just touch on that point first. So as I mentioned, we are almost pretty much halfway in between. So the majority of our traffic, if you're talking about a self-drive customer, they're absolutely coming from Melbourne via the Great Ocean Road. They might head north to the Grampians, and then from the Grampians area, which is an amazing, incredible ancient rock formations, they're only about 2.5 hours to crossing the border into South Australia. And where we are, we're literally 15 kilometres from the border of Victoria. So we're very close to that western region, Victoria. Then from our area, they might head through via the coastal road up to Adelaide or to the ferry to go to Kangaroo Island. We're about 5 hours to the ferry to Kangaroo Island. So that traditionally is the route. And they'll either come from Melbourne that way or they'll come from Adelaide. Either way, that's pretty much the route that most people do take. In regards to the region, I think people are very surprised, and it's certainly grown over the last couple of years. COVID's made everybody take stock. We've had a lot of family businesses. So we're talking regenerative farms, for example, that may have taken friends and family on farm tours and just out of interest and something to do. We've got a partner that we work with, for example, who's turned that into a fully fledged tourism business. They've actually built 2 fully off-grid luxury retreats on their property, and they're on 3,000 acres. Absolutely stunning. And they're only 10 minutes outside of Penola. When you're talking about luxury accommodation, that's an example of what we have. You've got paddock plate restaurants, for example, in the heart of Coonawarra, and Coonawarra is a tiny little town, but people are astounded by the quality of cuisine that they get, that we book them in for to dine with. Thinking you're in a country town, it's not Adelaide, it's not Barossa, it's not Melbourne, we'll probably get a pie and chips or something, which is what you get in the country town. Not that there's anything wrong with the pie and chips, I'm quite partial myself, but they walk out astounded because the owners have actually lived and worked overseas and in capital cities and have brought that influence back to the region and then have applied those concepts and principles to the local produce. It's wonderful, absolutely amazing. And you're a minute and a half away from our oldest winery across the road. So tying in those elements is fantastic. I think you mentioned the caves. So the Naracoorte Caves, which is only half an hour from where I am in Penola, most people don't realise that the Naracoorte Caves is the only UNESCO World Heritage listed site in South Australia. The Flinders Ranges are being assessed, which I believe they should be. It's absolutely stunning. But for the time being, we're the only one. So we're gonna grab that mantle and run with it. The Naracoorte Caves are famous for not only they've got incredible cave structures like stalagmites, stalactites, etc., but decades ago they discovered the largest collection of megafauna fossils in the southern hemisphere. So that particular region is full of sinkholes, very sandy, hilly terrain. And let's go back a million years. We had animals or marsupials that were roaming the earth, like giant kangaroos with buck teeth, flat faces, not the cute and cuddly ones that you see these days or that are in the brochures. They all literally got caught in these sinkholes and fell in and were trapped. They perished. But what happened was over the eons, as the earth swallowed them up, if you like, they were preserved in perfect cocoons. So when the caves were discovered and they started to dig and explore through archaeological digs, they discovered these perfectly preserved marsupial or megafauna fossils that are unlike anything anyone's ever seen around the country. So we get thousands and thousands of people coming from all over the world to come and have a look at these particular caves. So we offer tours through there and even private 3 and 4 and 5 hour tours with a private guide. So 2 people, private guide, past where the general public will go. So that type of element is really quite special and very close.
That is something that actually all of it, but particularly the private tour of the caves and being able to see behind the scenes and getting a deeper look into not only the caves, but being able to learn about it. Now, I'm looking at your background behind you. Is that one of the sinkholes that you're talking about?
This is actually a shot. It's one of my favourite shots. One of my favourite caves. It's not the megafauna cave. That's vastly different. I just love this photograph. This is actually called the Blanche Cave, or it's the Bat Cave. So it's not only famous for the megafauna fossils, but they have the largest collection of the rare and endangered. I think it's the southern right-winged bats. They're tiny little bats that they have a breeding program, and our guests can go into the private area with the guides. We don't go into the caves, obviously, because it's far too delicate, but they've set up infrared cameras in this viewing area just outside the cave. So you can actually go into this viewing area and actually see the tiny bats as they're going through their breeding process in the actual caves itself. To outside where the breeding area is, this is an incredible cavern that we walk through here, and this is part of the photograph background behind me, where you've got such an intricate and delicate area where the bats are, and yet this section of the cave, they've held concerts in here. So they've had string quartets and things like that, because as you can imagine, the acoustics are amazing. Yeah. So we've been able to bring people through and actually have a private little concert in this area here. It's phenomenal. It's run by SA National Parks or National Parks SA, fantastic partners of ours, and they are extremely excited that we've been able to elevate, because they run stunning group tours, but where we tend to concentrate on is that private nature. So for example, on a tour of this ilk, we would take you through the 3 caves. You would go into the fossil laboratory with the researcher. So you actually get to see the fossils, the catalogued fossils. They would take you past where the general public goes to live dig sites. And then at the end of the tour, we have a section of the national park where we actually use our local produce. We take our Toyota Land Cruiser, open up the awning, and we'll actually set up a 3-course meal that we prepare. And they can actually sit in this national park and digest what they've just gone through in natural surroundings with not a soul around. It's really stunning.
Sounds idyllic. The food, the wine, the behind the scenes. It seems like that would be ideal for somebody really wanting to escape and getting into the nature with the caves, but also the culture. And I guess that's where the people come in and the relationships with the community. The farm to table is also, I feel, a very important thing right now in terms of natural agriculture and the way people grow, staying within the 100-mile limit.
Yep.
A minute ago, we were talking about people driving through between Adelaide and Melbourne. Now, is that how people generally come, or is there another way that they would actually end up in Coonawarra?
Absolutely. I'm glad you raised that because we have that style of customer who wants to do the self-drive and it's their road trip and that's what they want to do. Having said that, there are other customers that may be a little bit time poor and they still want to take in all of the sites, but not necessarily drive themselves. They might be a little bit nervous being on the other side of the road and being here during busy times, etc. The Great Ocean Road can get very busy. Buses, trucks, and tour buses everywhere. So we offer a number of services. So one of the services we've just introduced over the last sort of probably 6 to 12 months is we offer a pickup service where we will pick your client up in Melbourne at their accommodation and host them along the Great Ocean Road. So we can either offer a hosting service where we will look after the driving, or we can offer the full service. We'll arrange the dining, we'll arrange the accommodation, fully host you right along the Great Ocean Road, stop at the sites that you must see, the 12 Apostles, the Cart Gorge, the Grampians, Regent, Halls Gap, etc. So we will do that, then bring you into our region. And usually I will do that stretch of the road and then Kerry might take over once they're actually in region. I have a little bit of a rest as such, review. And then we've actually delivered clients through to Adelaide, for example, or to the ferry at Kangaroo Island. It's a full self-service that we've been starting to offer because some of those clients out there really would like to be really hosted all the way through from Melbourne to Adelaide. We're happy to do that if that client would like us to do that. So that's at the nth degree. We work with a couple of partners both in South Australia and we're starting to work with, because we're so close, we work with reaching down via the Great Ocean Road and working with partners along there to create like that tourism handshake, if that makes sense. So what we're also doing is meeting helicopters, for example, that might be flying down from Barossa. Now, case in point, we've just got a quote out at the moment. We've got a friend of ours who runs a helicopter company out of the Barossa, a partner in tourism. She's looking to bring their client down to our region. We floated the idea of having helicopter come from Barossa and land at an area called Mayura Station, which is incredible. You may be familiar with it. It is one of the finest full-blood Japanese Wagyu beef dining restaurants in the country. It's located on a cattle station that's been there since the 1850s. So it's in the middle of nowhere down by the coast. Yeah, it's not a restaurant in the main street. It is literally in the middle of the nowhere on a dirt road because of what it is, what it was. So we've got a helicopter that's going to be landing in the car park on a Sunday, hopefully, if we can get the dates to align. The chef and the front of house will meet along with ourselves. The helicopter, as it arrives, they'll be ushered into the restaurant. The restaurant is going to be open for 2 people only at the chef's table. The chef will be cooking in front of the client. The client will also have a fully handcrafted Mayura Station steak knife that has been produced for them. Local artisans and craftsmiths from the Limestone Coast will be producing both the wooden handle and the stainless steel blade. And to cap it off, they'll actually have their names engraved on the knife as well. So they'll get to use their own personalised Mayura steak knife that they will be able to have them boxed up and either take with them, or because of traveling, we can actually get that knife shipped home when they arrive home.
Wow.
From there, they're going to be flown from Mayura Station to Warrawindi Escapes, which is our regenerative farm. Checking in, they'll be met by the farm. Kerry will be at the other end, where they'll be met by the owners of the property. Glass of local sparkling, literally landing outside your retreat. Ushered into your retreat, you'll be welcomed obviously with a fully stocked bar. You'll have a local farmer's provisions pack. So if you're a carnivore, which I believe these guys are, local lamb, local beef, local produce, homegrown tomatoes, breakfast packs, the whole 9 yards, local bottles of wine, etc., etc. And then we'll start, the following day will be a day of touring with wildlife, indigenous, coastal. That's the type of thing that we're working on at the moment. So we're really excited because it's bringing in all of the elements of our region, working together hand in glove. But not only that, we're actually working with partners in other regions and bringing all of the regions together. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the element. You've got everything from that self-drive through to an itinerary such as that. That's our sweet spot, we believe, that we've found.
That sounds idyllic. Helicopter in, full meal, for dining for 2. Sounds wonderful. And that really talks about the personalized service then that's available to a client who really wants to enjoy and appreciate everything that the region has to offer, both in terms of food, in terms of nature and sightseeing, as well as connecting with the people. Because if somebody's cooking in front of you, I would imagine the conversations would be quite interesting between the chef creating the beautiful meal in front of you and just the conversations.
We work with this partner regularly and they do dinners about 3 or 4 nights a week. So we're down there quite a lot and booking people in for the chef's table when the restaurant is actually open to the public. There's only 10 seats at the chef's table. If you've got that small group, that family, and as long as that family fits in 10 or under, we can hire the entire chef's table. So you've got the entire family or wedding party, whatever the occasion might be, basically around this chef's table. And so the conversation, you're literally learning obviously about the chef, where they're from, the history of their careers, but you're learning about the actual station. He does a full history of the station going back to the 1850s, how the cattle are raised, what they eat, how they went from being, let's say, standard cattle to full-blood Japanese Wagyu breeding. And they
Right.
can trace the bloodlines back 1900 years to Japan. They've won as many tourism awards as they have dining awards, I'll put it like that. So then the flames start flying and the steaks are sizzling. And having said that, they've got an incredibly good vegetarian menu too.
I
It's
think I've
just,
got more questions about the Wagyu beef and how that all started since
yeah,
1850.
people are in the middle of nowhere at one of the greatest dining venues in the country, and they're not sure how they got here sometimes. It's because they weren't planning it until we give them these opportunities to do that. And I'm saying you don't necessarily have to fly in on a helicopter. Not everybody does that, but you have got that option. But if you just want us to set up that type of dining experience and we drive you there from Penola, it's 45 minutes to drive there. So it's not difficult. We take care of everything, waiting time, booking, the lot. You just basically walk in, pick up your knife, and enjoy an incredible 5-course meal with stunning Limestone Coast wines.
I don't even have to ask my next question, which was going to be what does the area offer that Sydney, Melbourne, and the big cities don't? A far more intimate and truly luxury experience in the most
Unexpectedly.
unobvious setting.
Yes. And that's the thing. We had, digressing a little bit, we had couples just stay with us for 3 days this week who just left a few days ago. And as they were leaving, they asked me, how do we put what we just experienced? How do you put it on a brochure? It's a difficult thing to do because it's hard to explain until you're actually experiencing it. But we'd love to have you come over and spend some time with us and let us show you. Customers, whether they've been domestic or international, regardless of the country, we've had repeat business and referrals because of the experiences that they've had. And it's not just the dining, we've got indigenous. So we have an indigenous elder that we work with that takes people on coastal foraging. It's a very different experience to the interior because we're close to the coast. This particular Uncle Ken Jones is his name, and he runs a company called Bush Adventures. His ancestors, all his family, were fishermen. So it's a very different Aboriginal experience to what you would envisage in Australia. You're thinking about the
Sure.
interior, the Northern Territory, etc. Very different experience. He talks about slow time, which I know you're very big on. We're extremely big on. And it's about slowing down, taking time to breathe, having a chat, a chin wag, as he says, have a yarn.
Yawn.
Uncle
Yes, a
Kenzie, yeah,
yawn.
have a yarn, sit down. We'll sit down on the bough of a tree. He will grab some lemon myrtle from a tree. We'll have some Billy tea mugs, lemon myrtle in. We'll grab a biscuit and we'll sit down and we'll have a yarn for 20 minutes. And literally, it's not a tour, it's a chat. And we've had so many people say to us when we've been driving away, I told Ken something I've never told anyone else in my family, and I'd known him for 5 minutes. It's that type of thing. He just coaxes the conversation out of you. And then we will do it like a coastal foraging. This particular area is famous for southern rock lobster. We've actually set up deck chairs on the beach, little table in between, glass of Riesling, fresh lobster rolls, squeeze a lemon. You don't want to be anywhere else. And it's so simple, but so luxurious, premium.
Love the
Wonderful.
idea of slow time. I can see why you accumulated quite a few awards. You are bringing guests to the region and the people, creating a connection, which is the most important thing with travel. And like you say, slow time and really savoring the moment, whatever that is, whether it's on the beach with a lobster roll, or it's in front of a chef's table with a Wagyu, or in a cellar door enjoying the finest Cab Sav.
Yeah. What we do find when people get to us, regardless of how they've got to us and what their budgets may be, they're usually pretty tired. They've been on the road for a little bit of while. They've had a long international trip. They've been either self-driving or they've been traveling and trying to fit as much as they can in. And quite often when they get to us, they're in the middle of their trip and they're tired. So we try to make sure that if we can, we eke out an extra day or an extra half day just for them to stop, just for them to relax. If it's the winter time, we'll make sure their accommodation has the heating or the fire on. Have a cheese platter ready to go. Have a glass of wine. Have some sparkling chilled. So you can just stop, because as nice as it is to see everything and to do everything, you also need to be physically well enough to continue on, and also mentally, because you're in a different country. You've traveled extensively yourself. You've lived in Australia. It's a big country. And I think people think they can do Australia in 3 weeks. And look, you can barely do South Australia in 3 weeks. It's this because there's so much. So we're very strong on trying to get people to slow down, take something, and the simple pleasures. South Australia has a big campaign you may have seen called Celebrate the Simple Pleasures. And one element of that was we had some guests, digressing again, sorry, it's just come to mind, but we had some guests that we took out to the coastline who were big on cruises. They travel extensively on seaborne cruises. We took them out to the coastline. We did some four-wheel driving along our rugged coastline. It was August. Our August is cold. And we found a spot sheltered. And Kerry and I were sort of a bit nervous about what we could do for lunch given the conditions. And Kerry said, I'll do some soup. And so Kerry made up some minestrone soup, if you know what minestrone, just literally any vegetable thrown in. We got the Billy tea mugs out, crusty bread rolls, deck chairs, and overlooked the coastline in this secluded area. And they said it was one of their favourite things that they actually did, because it wasn't fancy, it wasn't glitzy, it wasn't glamorous, but it was hearty and it was warming, and it felt like they were having a home-cooked meal rather than a 3-course degustation or a set menu, that type of thing. So that's something that we're really big on as well. And I think it just reinvigorates, and it felt like even though we were touring, they were relaxing, they were having a break at the same time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I feel that travelers are now wanting that more, to really experience a place deeply so that they're able to actually breathe and appreciate the moments that they're in. And you're right, the simple pleasures, I can actually envisage it, sitting the coastline in front of you with a soup and a roll. You can almost feel yourself just relax a little bit.
One of the gentlemen actually asked Kerry for the recipe, and Kerry said, I don't use recipes. Have you got
Of course
vegetables?
not. Whatever's in the pantry or whatever's
Throw them in a pot.
Whatever I've got left from the produce.
Exactly, that's right. And that's the beauty of it. Her soup that day will be different every single day she makes it, but that's the beauty of it. And they loved it because it came from Kerry and it came from the heart. Absolutely. It means a lot. Yeah. The tagline of Celebrate the Simple Pleasures in South Australia couldn't ring more truer.
Sounds wonderful. Is there something that you would like to tell a traveler who might be listening to this? Something that you haven't mentioned, something that might be a little bit more behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think, for example, I think if people were considering coming to our region, on the whole, anyone that comes to our region usually is coming to Australia for maybe the second time or the third time, perhaps. Sometimes we get some first timers. We've had some first time German guests this week, but most people obviously come to Australia for the reef, the bridge, the rocks, and the big icon moments, which you have to do. But then once you've done that, have a look at South Australia, have a look at our region. What I would also suggest is having a look in this particular part of the world at obviously we've got incredible wildlife. So if you want to get up close and personal with some wildlife here, we've got a wonderful friend of ours who runs a private kangaroo sanctuary. And she's only 10 minutes away. She's a qualified wildlife carer. And for about 15 years, she's been taking in orphaned kangaroos that unfortunately the mothers have been hit and killed, or there's been trauma in the fields, paddocks and so forth. So she takes these kangaroos in and she offers our guests the opportunity to learn about the species. Rather than going to a zoo, she's not open to the public. She is not a tourism business. She is a friend on a private property that we have access to bring in. And she runs educational sessions about, yes, kangaroos are lovely, they're very cute, they're very cuddly. She'll talk about, for example, some of these areas in national parks where people are feeding them the wrong foods that actually interrupt with their digestive systems, for example, and cause really great problems. So they get an up close and personal experience, but they're also hopefully going away learning that if they encounter these wild animals somewhere else, to know how to treat them and to know when to stay away, what not to feed them. But so it's quite
not to feed them at all, I would say.
Yeah, not to feed them at all. But They get domesticated in certain areas of the country, as you're probably aware. They think they're doing the right thing, and unfortunately, they're so. It's that educational process. And of course, part of those that we get to make sure that we help Trudy out with vet bills and food for the kangaroos and that sort of thing. So it's a really lovely two-way relationship. So there's the wildlife kind angle of that type of thing. Also, I think also the natural wonders of this region. So I mentioned the caves before, but if we headed down to, say, Mount Gambier, which is half an hour south of where we are, Mount Gambier is famous for not only they've got hundreds of sinkholes down there as well, but they're mainly diving sinkholes and wet sinkholes. So you've got a natural wonder called the Blue Lake, which is actually Mount Gambier's water supply, drinking source. But it's this incredible volcanic crater that during the height of summer turns the most incredible cobalt blue. So think the image behind me, even a deeper, brighter cobalt blue. It's one of the most visited natural wonders in the region. And you can actually do a circuit walk around the Blue Lake. From there's a garden sinkhole called the Umfinston sinkhole that we take people to. It's literally a sinkhole, the ground's fallen in, and this incredible garden paradise. Think frangipanis and agapanthus and so forth. There's possums, there's all manner of wildlife in the sinkhole. And we've actually set up dining experiences. So we've had a chef come down and set up like a morning tea. And
wow.
he's turned up with his homemade croissants and pastries and so forth and freshly brewed coffee. Just something simple like that, but just elevate it, if that makes sense. 10, 15 minutes away from that is an incredible volcanic crater called Mount Shank, which I believe last erupted, they think, around about 5,000 years ago. But it's like a 45-minute hike to the top of this volcanic crater that's 10 minutes away from the department stores. So it's such a unique region. What we say, stay with us here in either Penola, Coonawarra or Mount Gambier, and you only need to pivot maybe with us maximum of an hour away to wine, wildlife, natural wonders, Wagyu beef, indigenous experiences, regenerative farming. The world's your oyster when you're here. And I think the biggest thing to take into account is make sure that we factor in enough time to let us build your preferred itinerary and have the time to execute it. That's that local knowledge as well that we like to pass on.
Absolutely. Simon, you have given us a wealth of information to discern how many days we would love to spend in the Coonawarra region, and depending on which of all those amazing places people want to see. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to chat.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. You've probably picked up on my passion for this region. It's our home now, and we want to showcase this region to as many people from around the globe as we possibly can. I just think it's the most wonderful place, the most wonderful region with the most wonderful people.
If today's conversation opened up a destination you hadn't considered, that's exactly what Beyond the Brochure is here to do. Simon and Kerry's details for Coonawarra Experiences are in the description below, along with everything you need to start planning your adventure to the Limestone Coast. Before you begin to design your own journey, download Mastering the Art of Travel Timing and explore the Travel Design Journal. You will find the links below. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with someone who's always looking for the story behind the destination. At Explorography, we believe extraordinary travel begins with curiosity. Until next time, may your journeys take you beyond the brochure.